Hello, listeners. This is Cindy Chen, your host for the podcast of The Rest of Your Life, My Childhood Suitcase. Man, oh man. Already 10 episodes. I cannot believe I've gotten up to 10 episodes. I did not think I could actually really have anything to talk about, much less think up a topic for which I can connect all the dots, how I came to this point, etc., etc. In fact, when I was editing the episode 10, which I will tell you in about just a moment, I actually didn't think of how I should frame the episode as with the topic. My penning titles were The Truth About Sour Notes to Sweet Notes, or The Power of Words, or Self-Worth. Well, it was actually due to that sweet note from an unexpected source that touched my heart very deeply, that it felt very touching to me. And when I was talking about why that was touching, I started telling this one story that I was going to save for another episode. But since I was already about halfway into the episode, I decided to just, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to lean into it and tell my fucking story of how it all came together full circle in a matter of speaking. And gosh, I really hope that you all would not be disappointed, but I hope that you'll be happy with how that came out, particularly with the results. And well, folks, I hope that you will enjoy this episode, which I have ultimately decided to call it The Truth About Self-Worth. So sit back, grab a cocktail, or boil yourself a nice cup of chamomile tea with a little whiskey, and I hope that you enjoy. Love you guys. Mwah. Hello, listeners. This is Cindy Chen, your host for the podcast of The Rest of Your Life, My Childhood Suitcase. Man, oh man, I did not think there would actually be episode 10. And I'm not sure what my topic will be, but I'm just gonna have to roll with it, shall we? You guys, I just had something brewing in me ever since this morning, and I feel like I need to record an episode about it. Ever since last night, actually. I actually wanted to tell you that I had received the sweetest and kindest note I had ever, ever received from an actual 9-year-old. And she happens to be in the cast with me for the staged reading, of which I am heading off to tonight up in Marysville. It's for this new play called The Crockpot, which is kind of a pun on the title The Crucible. Think of the Stepford Wives in athleisure and mixed with the Witches of Eastwick. And I'll let you get creative from here. Anyway, I just want to start with a very cute note written by the granddaughter of the director of this play I had just mentioned. And here it is. To Cindy, I don't know how to open. Oh, excuse me. I don't know how to spell your name, but I want you to know this. You are so funny and kind and sweet. And I just want you to know that you are my favorite cast member. Member is misspelled. And I also want you to know that I like you a lot. Love, Anaya, which is the name of the granddaughter. And I have to say, I was so touched by how sweet and kind. That was actually the kindest words I had ever read. And let me read this here. Anyway, as I was waiting in the wings, she gave me this note on this napkin for the last phrase, I like you a lot. Again, I'm reading off of my diary here that I just wrote this morning. The last phrase, I like you a lot, touched my heart quite deeply because it felt like everything I had worked for since late 2021 has come full circle to me. Reason I said it's come full circle for me is that I just realized that it had been since March 2021 that I decided to dive into Gabrielle Stone's two-part memoir, Eat, Pray, FML, and Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl. The first book, Eat, Pray, FML, I got in an audiobook form, and the second, I got it in paperback. Now, it has been a long time since I have read Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and the record for that, I read the Deathly Hallows within 7 days. Yes, 7 days. I read book 2 of Gabrielle Stone's memoir in less than 24 hours. And I was rather curious about her journey. So later on, I decided to join her book club that talked about that second book. And more on that later. The fact that the last phrase, I like you a lot, touched me deeply is because it is such a contrast to what my ex-boyfriend from 20 years ago, Bernard, said to me. His last words, which was his common defense mechanism, that no one would ever like me, when he really meant that there won't be another guy like him. Oh, let me back it up a bit. This was a guy that I had known from 20 years ago, and this whole story had occurred back in the winter of 2002 up at the Sadie Hawkins dance. Excuse me. I met him in a play called The Carabao Cries 2, which was a play about why Filipino culture is important, and Bernard and I became really close friends, and having taking breaks in between scenes and going out for some pho afterwards. We became really good friends and just hit it off. And he was the only friend that I ever had, and I felt like I was important to him. Like I could be, friends for life. Then 8 months later, along the way, I invited him to the Sadie Hawkins dance. And I'm just looking at this through a lens that, instead of a victim mindset, I am looking at it through a non-reactive, healed mindset. Thanks to, as I said, Gabrielle's healing throughout the last 4 years of my life. Over at the Sadie Hawkins dance, now this happened during my sophomore year of high school, which was a very sensitive and vulnerable time of my life. And it was also around the time that I was just discovering where my belief system of dating came down to. One night at the aquarium at the Sadie Hawkins dance, we sat in the fish room where you can see the many fishes that swim and sharks, even though they are mammals. Well, we were getting pretty comfortable with his arm around me, and I could feel our heads touching each other. Then in that moment, I could feel his face, and his lips touched mine, and I could feel the butterflies fluttering in my stomach. And I was actually the happiest in my life because I had just gotten dumped by my first boyfriend back in 2001, more on that later. first I was really happy that he actually, Bernard actually had chosen me and decided that he liked me more than a friend. And I think what happened shortly after, he just kind of retracted his arm and said, "Oh my god, I can't believe I just kissed my best friend." And then, at that moment, it didn't really matter to me, but best friend? Dude, it's not like you had kissed another guy, but I'm a girl for Pete's sake. And I was dressed in a really sexy black velvet dress, especially with the thigh slit around my right thigh, actually. And not to mention my long hair being put up in curls in a ponytail. See, if you had seen my picture, I was a stunner back in the day. I still am, to this day. No matter. What matters is that what happened within the next hour or so after making out a couple of more times as we were walking through the aquarium. He went upstairs to the dance floor where it was taking place, and it didn't matter what happened, but I stepped out of the bathroom after excusing myself, and little did I realize that in that spotlight right there, where the chairs were for people to sit down after dancing, I saw Bernard flirting with another girl named Michelle. And that time it was a very confusing time, so naturally I was very confused as to what the fuck was going on, and I did not have time to react, but I don't know what else happened, but I think I got a little mad. Right in my face, I could actually see red in my eyes when I saw the two of them flirting, even going as far as him getting her number. I honestly feel really sad for that 16-year-old girl right now, and I want to give her a hug and tell her everything's okay. You have the right to be mad, and you can scream whatever the hell you want. But at that time, I did not. I just kind of froze. Yes, that was what happened. I froze for I don't know how many minutes or even seconds passed by, but I just said nothing to Bernard, and I just was a bit mad because I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't know why the hell Bernard would do such a thing to me less than an hour after advancing from friendship to potential dating. But yeah, I guess he still thought of me as a friend, and to him it was a mistake to kiss me, but to me that was the happiest moment of my life, and I wanted so much to be his girlfriend. But he decided to keep me as a friend, one of those orbiters waiting in the wings. And while he would go about his business to flaunt his girlfriends in front of me, and to me he was my boyfriend. And to me, dating other girls while I was waiting at home for his phone call, this was around the early 2000s, so this was before cell phones became prevalent, before Blackberries became prevalent, before flip phones became prevalent, before even hell the iPhones became prevalent. So I ended up waiting for his phone calls every day whenever I would come home from school. And landlines. Yeah, landlines. So I would wait for his messages. There's nothing. He would always date a different girl every few months, and then he would get dumped, and then he would act like nothing has ever happened. Nothing has ever happened, and he and I would go about our business like any other couple. I honestly did not know at the time we were really dating, but I just let him treat me less than I deserved. And finally, back in around 2007, it was after having our pho lunch date, he finally became more serious with me. As he finally said, I like you very much, and I want us to be steady. To go steady, that is, meaning more serious, to be more exclusive with me. And he said, I'm glad you feel that way. We finally cemented with a kiss. About 48 hours later, he had to go down to Astoria, Oregon for this Job Corps program. I'll let you look it up to see what the hell that is, but it is legit. Job Corps. And Astoria is, I think it's either in Astoria or in Sedro-Woolley. No, doesn't matter. Don't know why he picked Oregon. But he did not have a car, so I ended up having to drive him to Oregon to stay with his relatives. A road trip down there. I guess it was all right. I admit he did have a lot of charm, but of course the charm started to wear off after he decided one day to disrespect me on every turn, until he decided to treat me a little better around 2007. Other than schmoozing and a bit of awkward pauses, when we got to Portland, Oregon, I think it was a bit. I don't know exactly what was happening, but I was kind of in my head, and Bernard didn't really talk to me, and we just kind of left it at that. I mean, in retrospect, in hindsight, one of us, neither of us had the chance to do the DTR, short for defining the relationship, listing out the boundaries, listing out what we should do and not do. We just kind of left it at that, and it was kind of the most awkward lunch over at Lloyd Center, where we had our last meal together before we parted ways. Then we carried on the 5-month long distance relationship, and over phone calls through his payphone or letters. I mean, I only kept about a couple of letters from him, and I would write him like once every week to tell him all the goings on of the week. And this was around the time that AOL was still popular at the day. You've got mail. So there was. Oh no! Wait a minute. I didn't use AOL. I used Outlook. Yes, I used Outlook to email him, and there was about the last 2 months, there was radio silence. All there was radio silence. No phone calls, no voicemail, no messages, no letters, no emails, no nothing. I tried writing I wrote him a letter. Nothing. And then I wrote him an email. Nothing. So I waited a week. I waited another week. Then 2 weeks went by. And then a month. And then 2 months went by. I started to panic. So I wrote him another email. Saying, hey Bernard, I don't know what's happening right now, but I just want to know if you're okay, if you're alive and well. I just want to be sure that you are in one piece. Please write me back. Love, Cindy. And then finally, I got an email from him within a week, which turns out to be a Dear Jane email saying, Dear Cindy, I should have written you this when I tell you this. I met someone else in the same program, and I think we shouldn't see each other anymore. And I don't know the exact words, but the fact that he met another girl in the same program while I was thinking of great things that we ought to do together when he got back. Not cool, dude. Not cool. So the 3 years went by without speaking to him ever again. And then he, all of a sudden, just emailed me saying, "Hey, how's it going? Let's be friends again." And then we exchanged each other's cell phone numbers when landlines became less common. Oh, we were getting along again. We were getting along again like old friends. But then shortly after, there were feelings of resentment bubbling up in me. I finally texted him one night saying, "Bernard, we need to talk." And I'm not sure about what happened in the texting conversation because we barely even called each other, but just texted each other. And that was at that moment. That was at that moment when he said these last words to me: "No guy will ever like you." Those words struck a chord to me at the time. And then I retorted saying, "Let me go back. Those last words that you said to me, maybe you should think about why no guy will ever like you." Well, I decided to clap back and said, "Well, maybe you should think about why all those girls kept dumping you." And then, in that moment, I finally deleted his phone number, email address, blocked everything, and that was that. That was back in 2010. But I know that, I thought that blocking and deleting him would finally get him out of my life. But I spent the next 11 years being so angry and so vengeful, and not to mention very hurt, that I just took it out on everybody. I threw tantrums at anyone who was trying to get in my space, even my parents and my autistic brother. And yes, I do take responsibility of that. I do take responsibility of my actions, my words, my behaviors. And mom and dad knew that I was hurting. I think in their own way, they just kind of say, I think in their own way, they knew that they didn't want to get in my space. They just kind of left me alone because they didn't know how to deal with me. They didn't know how to hug me and say everything is okay. And one night in early 2022, during one of those Zoom sessions, this was virtual FML book club with Gabrielle Stone. I finally told my story in front of 24 different strangers on the screen, on my computer screen. And I could feel myself, just that moment, I could feel everything bubbling up. Actually, everything I had held in, like a genie in the bottle, just came gushing out in a series of tears. Yeah. I just found myself heaving, sobbing, and everything in my chest and throat just started gushing. I mean, really, really gushing like oil out of the oil drill. And little did I realize how fucking tired and exhausted I was of holding it all in. Of holding all of those feelings in that I had towards Bernard, all these vengeful feelings. And then I finally started getting it all out, verbalizing, putting into words. And yeah, I think I know the reason now why that last phrase on that napkin note, "I like you a lot," from a 9-year-old girl who is a big fan of my talent, because that actually is a full circle moment to what I had experienced in 2011 in that last text message. The fact that Bernard's words, no guy will ever like you, or no one in general will ever like me, was actually a way of saying that there won't be another guy like him that will treat me the way he did. And you know what? He was right. That there is no one else in the world who would treat me as shamefully as he did. Because I finally learned to say, fuck off, I no longer accept you in my life. Not to mention having a fucking great guy, a unicorn like Mr. E, to adore me and make me fucking first in his life. And I also finally learned to accept myself. To finally consider myself that I am fucking good enough. I am fucking worthy. Thank God it took a 9-year-old it took a 9-year-old little girl named Anaya to show me how wonderful a life that I have led. And folks, for those of you out there who are still healing, who are still figuring out why the hell your life has not gone the way you want your life to, take a look at yourself. Look at your shoes, because you never know how much horse shit, how much horse flies are attracted to the horse shit on your shoes. And I think it's probably time to finally start cleaning it up and maybe start changing your mindset from playing the victim to finally playing the warrior, the fucking warrior that rises above everyone else. And I gotta say, I think a little over 95% of people are in survival mode. And I happen to be one of the 5 people who are in higher self and in creative mode. And this is why I am leaving you this episode today with a message. Look inside yourself. Don't replay all those conversations you've had in your head, but to actually just sit with the discomfort, the pain of the past, and work on making yourself safe. I think it's all in the matter of making yourself safe and appreciate the people who do love your energy. Like the people who are attracted to me because of my energy, my vibrations, the words, the kind words, my kindness, my spirit, instead of being repelled and telling me to go away. Because all those words that people say to you, all those terrible things that they say to you, all those terrible things that people have said to me, like my ex, it's actually more of a reflection of themselves. It says more about them than about you. When people try to show you their true colors, their characters, that they're not the kind of person they want to be in your life, listen. You listen to them. Take them at their word.
Take them at their face value. And remember, folks, I hear you and I see you. And I will see you at the next episode. Love you guys. Mwah.